Welcome back to the channel. I'm Crypto Trend Trader, and today we're going to be taking a look at Bitcoin on the daily Coinbase chart. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you it's not financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. These markets are extremely volatile, so please do your own research and trade responsibly. This chart's a little busy, but it's got a lot going on here, a lot of important things. So we have our regular Fibonacci's here. We have the potential Fib circle target. We have the initial triangle that we broke down from, and some various formations along the way. But you can just ignore all that right now. And what I want to do is focus down here on what's taking place at the moment. So we had basically gotten the breakout out of the descending triangle and then formed what appeared to be like a smaller descending triangle, but we ended up moving up to the top. So essentially we started making like this little zigzag pattern here, and now here we're approaching again for the third time this lower support. I think at this point in time though, what we could basically do is we could grab this triangle and essentially say, okay, maybe that C point up there is our top, and then we could pull the D over here and say, alright, are we just forming really like the same pattern? Is it just another triangle, like another basically just bearish consolidation before the dump? And we don't know definitively right now. We could be forming like more of a symmetrical triangle, as long as we have like this upward sloping support at the bottom here that we've touched basically 3 times and bounced off of. And then on the top, we only have 1 point at the moment, so it's a little more difficult to say, is this really what's going on? But as of now, you could argue that that's the situation that we have taking place. The problem with these patterns as they're playing out is, you don't always know until they play out, was it legitimate or not. So, but what we do know is we're basically forming this zigzag pattern. We had a consolidation, like slow sell-off here, and then, consolidation portion, like basically an uptrend temporarily, and then we kind of topped out here. We got that big sell-off, and then now we're getting that reversal coming down here. So now the reversal is inside this smaller channel, and again what we're doing is we're basically coming back down, and it looks like we had the 1, 2, 3, and it looks like we're coming down right now for that 4th test at that 7,700 range to test that same support line again. And at this point in time, you got to just assume that it's going to hold until it doesn't. So basically what could happen is we could get that bounce right here again. We test down here, get a little bounce off the bottom, and then we could get a move up to like the 83, 84 range without violating like this, this line here. Or we could form a bigger pattern. But at this point in time, we are at the lower end of the range, and although we do get like a lot of signals from the market that we're potentially going to sell off, if we switch to, hang on, I'm going to pull up a couple of indicators. But you'll see on basically all of these, we're signaling, looks like further movement to the downside, honestly. And if you want to use any of these indicators, they can all be found on TradingView for free. So feel free to help yourself. But at this point in time, looking at like the 4-hour now, and it does look like we could get, if we got one more sell-off here and then we could get a little bit of strength out of it, I think we could potentially get a bounce back up to like the 0.5 region, 8,500. But I just think it's less likely, because even though we got the higher, well, we got a high, we got a higher low, we got a higher high. If we potentially don't go all the way down here and we find support, we could call this a higher low, and then we could essentially hope to move up, and finally get that push up to 9,000. There's definitely potential for that taking place right now. So it's definitely a possibility that we could see a push up to that 9,000 range, honestly. But, I'm not going to get bullish on this thing anytime in the near future, unless I see basically a definitive move up. Now, if we saw a close above this channel right here, I think there's probably a continuation move that I would take back up to like the 0.5 for like a 5% move, or potentially to the top of that channel we've been looking at, essentially like a little bit higher. But I think 9,000 is getting further and further out of the cards the longer we consolidate in this area. And as you'll see on the on balance volume, there's not necessarily any sign that this is going to flip over anytime soon. Let's switch over to weekly and see what that's looking like. Alright, now again, this is a big deal right here. This is the second longest period of time we have ever gotten this on balance volume here. And now look, that was after the bear market in the bottom here. But when we got that dark continuation like that, that was the bottom of the bear market. So again, just looking at the indicators, and same deal with right here. We get that big sell-off and then it comes down here. We're basically right about here is the equivalent to the point we're at right now. So, that's right before we got a pretty nice move back up. And then one more time, let's look at this guy. We got the CCI coming out the bottom. We're not really getting like a super similar anything that's like particularly good. But I mean, you could go off again. It looks similar to this. It got like a sell-off, try to come back up, and then got a harsher sell-off down here. But it's still angled down at this point in time, so I would like to see that at least curve back up and start bottoming out, and then I think we'd have a little more potential. But again, just looking at the indicators, tough to tell at this point in time. It just looks like basically we're just at that horizontal support and the market's just indecision. And I think that's what's going on right now. I think there's a lot of indecision taking place. But I do know one thing. If we do get that sell-off and it goes, the next target is probably like 72. And if it goes from there, I mean, realistically, I'd be looking at like the 6,000 range. So, I think at this point in time, we're more likely to see continuation to the downside without seeing some obvious signs prior to that the market's going to reverse and head back up to the upside. I think if we start showing strength out of here, it'll be very obvious that there's a potential breakout taking place, as where for a lot of people, as far as the downside is concerned, that they're still seeing this thing as not going to dump any further. Like, this is it, we bottomed out, we're moving back up. Like, I'm seeing people get real bullish again, and I just don't necessarily think that's the time. I think there will be some signs that we could go by, but at this point in time, what I'd be looking for is the interactions right here on this horizontal support at the 7,900 range. It's been kind of holding us up quite a few times. I'd be looking for an immediate move as high as 8,100 if we push to the top, or down to 77 if we stay inside this channel and just come down for the double bottom. But that's assuming basically this would just kind of consolidate and move around inside the channel over the weekend, and then we could see a further move. But there is one thing randomly, I don't know if a lot of people followed the S&P, but this is an old chart that I had put together a while ago. I actually drew it at this blue line here, and it was essentially talking about Wyckoff distribution in the S&P. And you can see actually what's happening now is we came back up for that retest off the moving averages, and then we sold off and found support again at this point, bounce all the way up, and then it looks like we put in a lower high again and we're starting to sell off. We're staying inside. This is essentially like the parabola of us like gaining strength and then starting to lose strength and sell off. And we're now like fulfilling that. Now, I'm not saying this is perfect, but I haven't been moving these lines around. I just kind of threw them up here as like a rough guide for like the shape of the moves. But it's starting to play out. We'll see what happens. I mean, I think potentially, depending how this ends up closing out for like the weekly, monthly, I mean, that does look super bullish, so I'm not going to lie on the monthly. So let's see how this thing closes on the monthly, and we'll have a better idea where traditional markets are going to go. But, I'm definitely one of those people that believes that the markets are correlated, that we're better off in the crypto world if the S&P breaks to the upside and we get further continuation and the economies are booming. I think people are more likely to put money in a risk-on asset like Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So, and honestly, it's easier to make money when the market's going up than when it's going down. It's a fact. So I think we should all just hope that it turns back around. We get a couple more years out of this thing and we can load up our pockets before, any crazy crash or anything like that happens. So. But here we are, 7,900 guys. That's our daily take on Bitcoin. Hope you like the content. Appreciate all the love lately. And we'll see you on the next one. Crypto Trend Trader signing off.